Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars. Topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. I'm your host, as always, on Mondays and Thursdays. I'm Casey Foreman. A lot of cool stuff to talk about today, but obviously I want to start off by talking about the return, the official return of the NBA. It's back tonight, depending where you are. I think it's about 6:30 Eastern, but the NBA is officially back tonight, and that is what I want to start the podcast with. I want to give you guys a preview of basketball's official return. I also want to talk about Tom Thibodeau, how he is more than likely, if not officially, the next head coach of the New York Knicks. I want to break that down. I also want to talk about the Cleveland Cavaliers, not a team that always gets discussed, especially since LeBron left, but I want to talk about the Cavs, what they should do with their guy in Kevin Love, and then also what they should do with their entire roster, going forward. And then make sure you stick around until the very end of the show, my final segment, because I'm going to talk about this year's 2020 all-defensive teams. If you're into defense, the guys who play both sides of the ball, especially one side of the ball, stick around until the very last segment, the very end of the show. But like I said, let's go ahead and talk about the NBA. Its official return tonight. Like I said, depending where you are, 6:30, 5:30 where I am. But yeah, July 30th, Thursday, July 30th, we are back. We know they have been playing scrimmage games, exhibition games, for basically the past week. Like I've said, they've been playing, for basically the past week. On my last podcast, I talked about some of the scrimmage games that had taken place at that time. But yes, the scrimmage games have been going on now for about a week. They finished up yesterday, or 2 days ago actually, they finished up, I believe. The courts look fantastic. If you did not get a chance to go check out these scrimmage games, I want to come out and say the presentation they have put on so far, just in these exhibition games, look fantastic. They look professional. In my opinion, they look even better than what the MLB has done in their empty stadiums. I think the NBA, where they're playing, I think it looks fantastic. So I want to go ahead and start with that as well. It looks fantastic. Better than the MLB. We'll see what the NHL looks like. It kicked off yesterday, I believe, or today it is kicking off as well. So the NHL is kicking off. We'll have to see if they look just as good as the NBA does in their bubble situation. But the bubble is looking good. 0 COVID tests as of right now as well. So everything's looking good for the kickoff of the, the official kickoff of the 8 seeding games. The teams all look pretty good, or the ones that we would kind of expect, they're all looking pretty good. Both LA teams, the Lakers and the Clippers, are both looking pretty good. The Milwaukee Bucks with Giannis, he himself, he's putting on a small montage himself, going off, dunking over everybody, getting a whole lot of rebounds. So he's basically playing. He picked up right where he left off. The Bucks are looking just as good, just as dominant. The Oklahoma City Thunder is a team I'm impressed with. Even though a team they've been together only this year, a couple of young guys on that team that kind of lead the team, as well as, underneath their leader, obviously, in Chris Paul. But either way, they came out firing, beat the Celtics and the 76ers in scrimmage games. So they played very well in scrimmage games. They're looking very good. The Dallas Mavericks with Luka, Kristaps, they're looking pretty good so far, especially Luka. The Trailblazers, they're finally at 100%. So the Trailblazers are looking pretty good. Finally having Nurkic back, finally having basically just a healthy roster, it looks like, and they seem to be hitting or playing. I watched about a quarter of the game with Damian Lillard, Nurkic, and McCollum all playing, and they seem to be they seem to be playing very well together. Again, pick up right where they left off, despite Nurkic not playing for I think a year with his injury, so he's back playing. Seems fantastic. So the Trailblazers look good. Also the Denver Nuggets, Bol, he's looking pretty young star-like. It's been a small portion size, but from what we've seen, he's looking very good. That Nuggets, the center lineup they basically had, which is, the opposite of what the Houston Rockets seem to be running, who those two teams are probably going to be matching up in the first round, so that's an intriguing thing going forward. So teams look good, despite having the 4-month layover. All of the teams, for the most part, are looking good. Obviously, teams like the Nets, the Wizards, the Kings, maybe the Spurs, not looking too hot, which is something I kind of predicted before this all started, but those teams not looking too good. But like I said, for the most part, everything's looking good, especially the courts. Tonight, the games kick off 5:30, 6:30, or depending where you are, with the Pelicans against the Utah Jazz. Okay, Zion against basically patient zero for the coronavirus in the NBA in Rudy Gobert. So Zion against Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert. The NBA definitely knew what they were doing when they scheduled this game. Zion being on the first game back, I think it's a clever move, because they know Zion playing equals people watching. So the more games he's in, the more people are going to watch. So the NBA knew exactly what they were doing by putting Zion in the first game back. I'm glad they did, because I'm really excited to see what he looks like. I know the Pelicans themselves look very good. I watched one of their scrimmage games, and they all played very well. Sorry, got a quick drink of water. Got to hydrate, but they all played very well, the Pelicans did. So I'm excited to see Zion get thrown into that mix. He seemed to be in great shape. So yeah, Zion against patient zero, basically, in Rudy Gobert. I'm excited to see the whole Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert thing, because I've heard stories recently that friendship, that tandem, isn't exactly at a 100%, despite what we have been hearing recently. So there might be some under the table, some issues that we might see happening behind the cameras. Let's see if they can go out and play 100%. Let's see if they can be dominant. Conley went out there and played very well in one of the scrimmage games. So if they can have Conley playing well in their system, that Utah team is going to be playing much better than what they did in the regular season. Even though, yes, they have lost their best three-point shooter in Bogdanovich, which is a big blow to that team. So we'll see how far they can get. If Donovan Mitchell and Gobert are playing good together, forget the past. That's going to do nothing but help them. Hopefully Conley can fit in with the system, so that's also an intriguing concept, something you need to be looking for. Like I said, Zion seems to be in great shape. And as far as the Pelicans go in, their seeding games, I talked about it when the seeding game schedules first got released, but I'll talk about it again right now. They have a relatively easy seeding game schedule. I think that was also done on purpose, similar to Zion being in the first game back. They purposely, in my opinion, gave him a relatively easy 8 seeding game schedule to make sure him and the Pelicans are that 8th seed facing up against the Lakers in that first round. So I think the NBA knew what they were doing. But my point with this is that this game against the Jazz, the opener, is arguably one of the 2 tough games they have in the 8 seeding games. They play the Jazz and the Clippers. Those 2 are the 2 toughest games, in my opinion, in their seeding game schedule. They get the Jazz knocked out right away, and if they can come out and beat the Jazz in their first game back, again, one out of their 2 tough games, if they can win one of the 2 tough games, I am predicting them, which I already have predicted, but especially if they win the game against the Jazz tonight, I am predicting them to have a great seeding schedule record. Over at least 6 wins is what I'm predicting for them if they win the games they're favored to win, and especially if they can beat this Utah Jazz team, which, like I said, is one out of the 2 tough matchups for them in this seeding schedule. So again, if they win, I definitely think they're going to have a great seeding game schedule. If they lose, it's going to be showing that the Utah Jazz are going to be arguably picking up right where they left off. Hopefully better with Conley. Hopefully, he was in and out of the starting lineup even, which is laughable when you think of how good he is playing. So it shows you how tough that situation really was in Utah. We know it's got to be a little awkward between Gobert and Mitchell, Gobert and the rest of the team possibly. So I saw a story today that's saying, Mitchell is the franchise guy, or should be the franchise guy, the guy going forward if this tandem does in fact have to be split up. Donovan Mitchell is definitely the guy you keep in Gobert, despite being the defensive anchor powerhouse that he is. You have to move him and keep the talent in Donovan Mitchell. That's a story I read earlier today by an executive, a random executive, anonymous executive, I should say, from the league. So a very intriguing thing right there. Either way, I have the Pelicans winning if Zion is 100% healthy, which it said he is. So if they're healthy, I have the Pelicans winning tonight. I hope they win at least. Again, if they don't, no big deal. Props to Utah, but I think Zion, the power of Zion, what he brings, his intensity, I got the Pelicans winning on the biggest stage tonight in the opener. Let's go ahead and talk about the late game, the game I'm very excited for, and a game I bet everybody, listening to this podcast is very excited for. The Battle of LA, arguably, and hopefully, the Western Conference Finals preview. Hopefully this is what we see in the Western Conference Finals, but the Lakers and the Clippers are the late game, the late matchup for this NBA, the official return on NBA on TNT. Lakers are playing at 8:30. So Lakers versus Clippers. Clippers are going to be missing Lou Williams, and I believe they're going to be missing Montrezl Harrell, who is still away from the bubble. He's kind of gone MIA, apparently. And Lou, we know the whole situation with Lou. I talked about it on my last podcast. He is going to be missing the first 1 or 2 of their seeding games. So the Clippers will be missing basically 40 points off of the bench. So not something you want to underestimate. Something that will definitely be in the Lakers' favor. So Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell, arguably 40 points off the bench, arguably 2 of the best bench players in the league today. They're both in the running for the 6th Man of the Year award, and they're missing both of them for one of the hardest games in their seeding game schedule. So the Lakers have to be favored in this matchup. The Clippers did look good in their scrimmage games. Like I said, Paul George is playing well, which is really what you want to see. However, they are a little short-handed right now. The Lakers, on the other hand, on the complete opposite end, they're looking good. They seem to be at full strength despite losing Rondo and Avery Bradley. They seem to be at 100%. Dion Waiters, they seem to be great additions to the team. They seem to be guys who should have been there all season, who it seems like they have been there all season, honestly, when you're watching it. So they're playing great. They're the reason, they single-handedly beat the Washington Wizards. Dion and JR did in one of their scrimmage games. So the Lakers are looking good. The integration of those two players are again looking good, and it seems to be the two, it seems like they made the right move in bringing in JR and Dion, which I talked about. It shouldn't be an underrated move. It wasn't really something people were talking about, especially the move with Dion Waiters. I'm really excited to see what he can do on this Laker team. He can definitely be that third option that they need on any given night. Not every night, but he can be that option on a few of the nights throughout the playoffs for sure. Clippers, like I said, will be missing 40 points arguably off the bench. So even though this season they have the upper hand on the matchup against the Lakers, they're up 2-1. So I have the Lakers winning tonight. Excuse me. I have the Lakers winning tonight, tying up the season series at 2 apiece. It's always competitive between these two teams, no matter who comes out on top. All the games so far have been competitive, have pretty much gone down to the wire, proving that these are two of the best teams in the league today, and proving why they are both favored to win the finals this year. Both teams are in the Western Conference, Lakers and Clippers, both in the same city, in the same stadium, are both should be the two best favorites to win this year's championship. Hopefully it's a Western Conference Finals preview. It should be what we see, despite one of the teams really underachieving and losing before the Western Conference Finals. That would ultimately be, that's what that would mean if this isn't the Western Conference Finals. So hopefully it is what we see. Again, I have the Lakers winning because the Clippers are such short-handed. I have the Lakers playing very well in this regular seeding, or the 8 seeding game schedule. I'll keep you guys posted throughout this week goes. On Monday, I'll make sure to keep you guys updated. But those are the two games, Pelicans against the Jazz. I have the Pelicans winning in that matchup. I also have the Lakers winning their matchup against the Los Angeles Clippers. Either way, it's fantastic to have basketball back. I think we're all really looking forward to simply watching down and watching some meaningful games. We got to watch some basketball with the scrimmage games that happened, but we didn't. It wasn't meaningful, is what I should say. We got basketball back, but they were meaningless scrimmage games, exhibition games. Now these affect their seeding games. They're seeding in the postseason. So these games matter, and we get to see Zion, the next possible face of the league, and we get to see the Battle of LA. The two best teams in the league facing off. Despite the Clippers being shorthanded, I think it's going to be a good game and a good night of basketball. I am really looking forward to it. I'm going to go ahead and take a quick break. When I come back, like I said earlier, I'm going to go ahead and talk about the New York Knicks' next head coach. Don't go anywhere. I'm going to be right back.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, guys, welcome back like I said before the break, I want to talk about the New York Knicks. Their decision, basically, it hasn't been official on paper yet, but what we're hearing is they have decided to make Tom Thibodeau the next head coach of the New York Knicks for the next 5 years. Okay, it's a 5-year deal. It's said to be a 5-year deal. Again, it's not official on paper. It's basically a verbal agreement as of right now. But let's go ahead and talk about the move. Before I talk about this, though, I forgot in my last segment to tell you guys about the games on Friday as well, because it's not your typical NBA play, not your typical NBA basketball schedule, because in Orlando they're going to be playing all throughout the day, like I said, not just at night, not your typical schedule. So they're going to be playing all throughout the day, and that's kicking off on Friday. The Celtics and the Bucks are facing off. So arguably the two best teams in the East, in my opinion, are going to be facing off. I'm excited to see Giannis against Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. We'll see if Kemba Walker's back 100%. Gordon Hayward, Marcus Smart. Either way, I'm excited for that matchup. Can Giannis take down all the young stars on that team? I do have the Bucks coming out and Giannis somewhat dominating that. And also the Rockets are playing the Mavericks. I got the Rockets beating the Mavericks. I got James Harden kind of shooting the lights out. We'll see. Also got the Trailblazers against the Grizzlies. I got the Trailblazers beating the Grizzlies. But there are more games happening tomorrow all throughout the day. Make sure you go check those out as well. Okay. That's out of the way. Let's go back to the original topic at hand. Tom Thibodeau is the next head coach of the New York Knicks. Like I said, it's said to be a 5-year deal. 5 years. That is the half of a decade. That is the future of the Knicks in the hands of Tom Thibodeau. Wow. A guy who has been there and done that in this league for sure. But before we talk about Tom and what he's done, where he's been, let's talk about the Knicks, where they are real quick. So this past year, they've had two head coaches. David Fizdale, Mike Miller, who was the assistant coach, who obviously was promoted to head coach when David was fired 20-something games in. So just a little bit into the season, they fire David Fizdale, which I wasn't necessarily a fan of. That wasn't something I really agreed with. I liked Fizdale for the Knicks as well. I liked his personality. I liked him in Memphis. I liked him what he did in Miami as an assistant coach as well. So he seemed like a good fit, somewhat of a bigger name for that big franchise. So like I talked about before, that franchise likes big names when talking about how LaMelo should go to the Knicks, because they're a franchise, of course, that, like I said, runs off of the big names in the big city, the Big Apple, of course, obviously. So he seemed to be relatable, kind of to the younger players, approachable and kind of cool, and he did pretty well in Memphis, and as far as in Memphis, let's see, he went 71 and 134. So I do kind of get why he gets fired with the negative record, 71 and 134. But he made the playoffs in Memphis. He didn't quite have a very good roster in New York. So they didn't, I don't know why, if they wanted results so quickly. I didn't see why. I didn't see how either. So I didn't quite get the firing of Fizdale. Maybe they just needed to get him out. Didn't like the hiring right away. Maybe he just wasn't a good fit. Maybe that. Either way, I didn't quite get it. Mike Miller also has never worked in the NBA before. This was his first year working in the NBA as an assistant, then as a head coach. So he kind of lucked out, got some head coaching experience, didn't do too bad, but again, with the roster he had, didn't have much to work with. But either way, he isn't the right choice. Like I said, they need a bigger name. They need a big name, kind of like a Fizdale, like a Tom Thibodeau. I'm not saying he's the perfect guy for the job, but for the New York Knicks at least, it makes sense they went with the big name out there in the coaching free agency in Tom. He's a career 352 to 245. So he's positive in his career by well over 100 games, and that's with the Bulls and the Timberwolves. He's most known, however, most of us, like myself, know him from his 5-year stunt with the Chicago Bulls as their head coach. He had a record of 255 and 139 with the Chicago Bulls, so obviously well over 100 in the positive section. So he had a winning record in Chicago. However, in the postseason, had a record of 23 and 28. So when it really mattered the most, okay, the postseason, the 23 and 28 having a losing record. I know LeBron James was in that Eastern Conference that had a big part of it. Whenever they matched up against him on that Miami Heat team, it was basically over. Okay, so they put up a little bit of a fight, but they were outmatched against that Miami team. So that did have a decent amount to do with them losing in the postseason. Either way, 23 and 28 with players like Derrick Rose, Jimmy Butler, Luol Deng, Joakim Noah, Carlos Boozer, Kyle Korver was there for a minute. So they had some quality names on that team, some high quality players. However, a postseason record of 23 and 28, a great regular season record, like I said, of 255 to 139. They made the Eastern Conference Finals once. They even, they made the Eastern Conference Finals, I believe only one time. Maybe it was twice, but again, when they matched up against him and then when they matched up against LeBron in Cleveland, if Thibodeau was still there when he went back. I'm not quite sure if he was. Either way, they didn't have much of a chance against LeBron James. So, but in Thibodeau's favor, in 2010, 2011, I think his first year with the Bulls, they went 62 and 20. He wins the Coach of the Year award. So there's some more accolades, accomplishments in his favor on his side. So Tom Thibodeau, definitely a veteran coach, been there and done that. If you're just looking at the Chicago Bulls, it's like, why wouldn't this guy get a job, right? He seems to be a great coach. But then he goes to the Minnesota Timberwolves, okay, the T-Wolves. He was in charge of the basketball operations as well as, obviously, the head coach. So he had a whole lot to do with what was going on in Minnesota. He definitely had some young and promising talent, some young and promising teams in the Timberwolves. Guys like Karl-Anthony Towns, Andrew Wiggins, Zach LaVine, Jimmy Butler even for a couple of years. So, yes, he had some talent with him in Minnesota. However, he went 97 and 204 in Minnesota, okay, 97 wins to 204 losses. It was kind of expected that he was going to go there and turn it around, get that Timberwolves team competing. He somewhat did, okay. One year they won for almost 50 games. They were the 8th seed, 8th or 7th seed. They play the Houston Rockets and basically get swept and blown off of the court by the Houston Rockets, despite having a post-dominant threat in Karl-Anthony Towns. Not something that the Rockets were capable of handling, but didn't necessarily, Cat didn't thrive. Jimmy Butler didn't quite play that well, and Thibodeau didn't quite seem to be the coach we all kind of thought he was. That roster underachieved. He was there for about 2.5, almost 3 years. They fired him in his 3rd year, despite, having almost a neutral record at the time. I guess they just saw the ceiling with that team wasn't too high, with him wasn't that high, so they decided to make a move. They haven't looked very good since, but like I said, Thibodeau did get the Timberwolves to the postseason, 1 out of his 2.5, 3 years there. He had some great players like Cat, Wiggins. I wouldn't say Wiggins is a great player, but he had he had Cat and Butler together, 2 very good players, with a good supporting cast around. You had Jamal Crawford was there. Derrick Rose was there at a time. Who else am I thinking? I can't quite think, but they had multiple guys who also played on the Knicks with them. Oh, Taj Gibson, that's it as well. So they were calling them the Minnesota Bulls at a time because they had so many old Bulls players on that Minnesota team. So they had a good roster. They had a good team. However, Thibodeau couldn't quite get the ceiling high enough on that Timberwolves team, a ceiling we all thought was pretty high. Ended up not being too high after all. A little bit of underachieving, again with the 97 to 204 ratio. Maybe he isn't the best with young players, and maybe he isn't the best at developing young talent, maybe. I know when he was working with the Bulls, with the team he had, the guys I listed off, yes, they were kind of younger at the time, but he also had a lot of veterans that were helping him on the team that bought into his tough grit and grind game plan. Now with the New York Knicks, he's going to be coaching a lot of young players. Okay, he's going to be coaching a lot of young players. And he's had a lot of success, but again, underachieved with the New York Knicks. A lot of young players in comparison to what he had in Chicago. Again, a lot of tough vets. In New York, you got R.J. Barrett, only 19 years old. Okay, 19 years old R.J. Barrett is. You got Kevin Knox. He's 20 years old. Kevin Knox is 20 years old. You got Mitchell Robinson, 21 years old. You got Dennis Smith Jr., 22. Julius Randle is basically the oldest of the core group, and he's 25 years old. He's still really young. He's on his first bigger contract with the Knicks. So he's the oldest of the group, and he's 25 years old. Is this young group, and not to mention the lottery pick, the prospect they're going to be picking this year, I think they should get LaMelo Ball, who's 19 years old. Is he going to buy into the tough grit and grind system of the Tom Thibodeau? Is it going to work? Can he develop this young talent, or is he going to somewhat underachieve like he did in Minnesota? That's my biggest worry. He hasn't really necessarily proven to be the best at developing young talent. That doesn't seem to be his specialty. His specialty is grit grind, playing a whole bunch every single night, playing defense. And I'm not sure if this young core group is going to buy into that, and I'm not sure they should. I'm not sure if that should be his game plan in today's NBA with the guys he has. That shouldn't be the game plan going forward. So can he adapt to today's NBA? Can he change his game plan, change his style to today's NBA, and can he adapt and develop those young players? That is my biggest question for Tom Thibodeau and the Knicks with this hiring. Again, it makes sense. They go with Tom Thibodeau, a bigger name, obviously one of the biggest names in the free agent coaching free agent market. So it makes sense. He's been there and done that before. When you're talking about, a veteran in this league, a coach of the year, he's been to the Eastern Conference Finals, the second biggest stage in the league. So he has a positive record, like I said earlier. What's his record? He's a career 352 to 245. So he's positive in his career, somewhat of a proven guy. It makes sense they make the coaching job, but can he adapt to the league and change his old ways with this young roster? That's my biggest question with this Knicks hire. I somewhat like the hire. I like Tom Thibodeau and what he did for the Bulls. I don't like what he did with the Timberwolves, even though he did get them to the postseason one year. I think it was an underachievement with that roster. However, like I said, we'll see what he can do with this young New York Knicks team. Hopefully he can turn them around. Hopefully they can get the right prospect in the draft in LaMelo Ball. That's really what it's going to come down to, the right players. You can have the best coach, but it really does come down to the NBA. You have to have the right players. So we'll see what they can do in this year's draft. I want to go ahead and take a quick break. When I come back, I want to discuss the Cleveland Cavaliers. Yes, the Cavaliers. No, LeBron's not on the team. I want to talk about their roster, what they should do with that big contract in Kevin Love. So don't go anywhere. I'm going to be right back.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA, from the UFC to extreme cage fighting. They got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back, guys. Like I said before the break, I want to talk about the Cleveland Cavaliers, okay? What they should do with their roster and with that big contract they have with Kevin Love. Let's go ahead and break it down. Before we talk about where they are now, let's go back to where they were when they got Kevin Love. Obviously now they're in a completely different position post LeBron James. Basically, that's the difference. They first acquired Kevin Love when LeBron left Miami to return home to Cleveland. They traded Andrew Wiggins, who at the time was the number one pick, or going to the number one pick. They trade that for Kevin Love. Yeah, they trade Kevin Love for the number one pick. Yeah, that's how good Kevin Love was and, potentially is. Either way, they trade that for Kevin Love. They make the big three with LeBron James, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Love. They go to 4 straight NBA Finals. They win one of those, obviously, with the epic 3-1 comeback, and the rest is history. Cleveland gets its first title. So, we know what happened when he was there. We know how he got there. And now, though, Kyrie got shipped off to Boston, and now he's in Brooklyn. LeBron obviously leaves for the Los Angeles Lakers. Kevin Love, on the opposite end, gets extended, it seems like, extends his contract when all this is going on, and he is still there. Kevin Love goes nowhere. Now the Cavaliers are rebuilding. It's a newer, younger-ish roster, and new coach as well. It's kind of a big question who's going to be the next franchise guy. Maybe they have it now. I couldn't even name you the current Cleveland Cavalier coach. I know that's terrible. I couldn't even name you their coach right now. But again, all that's up for hands, and yet, they still have Kevin Love. They went 19-46 this year. Kevin only plays 40-something games, maybe. But Kevin is basically the only thing left from the quote good old days, as I should say for the Cavs, the good old days when they had LeBron in the big three together, going to the finals. Kevin is basically the only piece left after that roster, that I don't want to say dynasty, but they were no way a dynasty, but that roster we will always remember coming back from 3-1, that legendary roster. So much different now. Kevin's the only piece left over from that team. This year, despite being on the 19-46, one of the worst teams in the league, he averaged 17 points, 10 rebounds, 3 assists, and 37% from the three-point line. Oh, it said he played 56 games, actually, I have written down. So 56 games, 17 points, 10 rebounds, 37 from the three-point line. So pretty good stats there from an aging guy, or a guy people say is aging, obviously. But He is no longer. I do want to come out and say he's no longer the star, the number one pick they traded for. He's no longer that player. He's older, different body, different game style now. He plays a different way. But he's not damaged goods, and he can still, he can still contribute to a contending team. He can still be a piece to a team that a piece that a team needs. Okay, they recently traded the Cavaliers. They recently traded for Andre Drummond for basically nothing. They gave away like Brandon Knight and like a second round pick for Andre Drummond, arguably an all-star talent. So they gave up nothing, got an all-star in return. So they got nothing but equity in that trade. They can choose however they want. I'll talk about what they should probably do with him in a minute, but the Andre Drummond Kevin Love tandem, potentially if they keep Love around, is very similar to what we saw in Detroit with Andre Drummond and Blake Griffin. Okay, Blake Griffin moving his game a lot outwards, shooting the ball a whole lot, which obviously is Kevin's game. So a two big man, a post-centric, outside shooting-centric game plan here with two bigs didn't necessarily work out for Detroit and the Pistons. I don't see it working out for the Cavaliers, so I don't think that should be their game plan. It should be to pair up Drummond and Love and see what they can do with the two young guards they have in Sexton and Garland. I don't think that should be the game plan going forward, because I see them having a very similar result as they did in Detroit. So I don't think that should be the game plan going forward. Again, Drummond and Love very similar to Drummond and Griffin. So I don't think that would work. They need to move the older, more expensive piece, which is obviously Kevin Love. They need to move Kevin Love. They probably should end up extending Andre Drummond. They got him for nothing, but they could end up flipping him and getting maybe end up getting a first round pick for him. Maybe they get a couple of players. Obviously the market isn't too high for Drummond if he was traded for a second round pick, but still they can either use him as straight equity or they extend him long term and make him part of their long term plan, because he's only 26 years old, guys. He's not similar with Kevin Love. He's not damaged goods by any means. And Kevin Love is only 31 years old. So don't be talking too much crap on Kevin Love. But either way, Drummond only 26. I do think they need to extend him since they got him for basically nothing, or they trade him and get even more, because again, they traded basically nothing and got an all-star in return. So the Cavs can do, there's necessarily no wrong in this situation unless you get nothing in return for him, because then you gave up nothing and you got nothing in return and lost the all-star talent. But yes, it is said that they would want a young player. I was looking up some potential trades, trying to see what's in the trade market right now as far as for Kevin Love, and there really isn't a big market for him. It's said that the Cavs would want a first round pick at least for him, or a promising possible young player is what they would most likely want for the aging star in Kevin Love, which I am all for. I think that would be a great thing for them to get a promising young player or a first round pick. But the trade market is not the biggest it has been for Kevin Love. Like I said earlier, you won't be seeing the number one overall pick being traded for Kevin Love again. That happened once. It will not be happening again. He's not the same player. However, like I said, no damaged goods, still averaging 17 points, 10 rebounds, and can shoot almost 40%, 37. He's capable, in my opinion, of shooting almost 40% from that 3-point line. So a big who can get you 10 rebounds and shoot and spread the floor. So his value should not be undervalued. I saw a team like the Phoenix Suns. They are a team somewhat in rumors, a team in Phoenix, a team needing scoring and needing veteran presence. So Kevin Love bringing them 17, 18 points, 9, 10 rebounds, spreading the floor, giving them that veteran winning presence. He's won a championship. So he knows what it takes to win. Adding him to that locker room, that roster could help them. They have the two guys in DeAndre Ayton and Devin Booker, but besides that, not much to talk about. That would kind of fill up the cap space, but either way, if they could do it, I would be happy to see Kevin. I think that would be a good move to see Kevin on the Suns roster. That helps them flip the switch and become more of a playoff contender. At least I would think it should. Also, I like the team. The Trailblazers. It's a team, that's a team I've been thinking, Kevin Love would be perfect on for a long time now. In my 2K days, I'd be playing with the Trailblazers. I would definitely try to get one of a shooting big that can help spread the floor and get me some more rebounds. So Kevin Love to that roster. I did it in 2K, so I've seen it work. I think it would work in the real life NBA as well. Like I said, they need a big that can spread the floor. They got Nurkic back, a real post presence who can pass, as well as somewhat knock down the three ball, the outside shot. He's no Kevin Love from outside, but can definitely shoot. He can pass probably just as good, if not better than Kevin Love, and can rebound better. So if they can get Kevin to be the number 4 spot who can spread the floor, Nurkic can still hang out down low. Whiteside can possibly still come off the bench. I would love to see Kevin Love in Portland, still with the veteran presence. I love to see Carmelo hanging around in Portland as well. That's a segment for another day. Where does Carmelo land? Where does he fit the best? But still, I would love to see Kevin Love in a Portland Trailblazer uniform. How the Portland Trailblazers would do that with their cap and how they would acquire him as far as what their assets are, I'm not quite sure. But if they could get it done, I would love to see him there. Also, the Jazz, I was thinking about it, and I would love to see a shooting big who can spread the floor in Utah. They seem to be needing some more shooting. They got some defense with Gobert and Mitchell, Conley, so they simply need some more offense. Kevin Love, some veteran experience, some offense, also some rebounding. I would like to see Kevin in Utah if they can pull off a trade as well. That would be a cool pick. Anything that honestly gets him out of there. The Cavs need to trade him. He's somewhat wasting the end of his prime. I don't think he's in his prime. He's wasting the tail end of his career, which he can still contribute, like I said. He's wasting these years in a losing team, losing organization in Cleveland. Also, Cleveland, a rebuilding team. Why would you keep all that cap space for no reason when you're a rebuilding team anyway? So why wouldn't you trade the biggest thing holding your cap right now? So why wouldn't you trade that, get rid of him, so it helps both parties in Kevin Love and the Cleveland Cavaliers? That's what I think they should do. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and let me on social media. But again, that's what I think they need to get rid of that, get some more cap space for those young players building for the future. Use the lottery pick this year. You got Drummond as an all-star piece to continue building with. So you got some pieces, you got picks, and let's see, you got assets in Kevin Love. How big that market is, who knows? But there are teams that I could use him. The Cavaliers somewhat wasting the talents, I think. So that's what I think in a team in the Cleveland Cavaliers. We'll see the next time I talk about this team. Hopefully, when they make a deal for Kevin Love or maybe possibly Andre Drummond. We'll see. That's all I have to say about the Cavs. We'll see the next time I talk about that team. But I'm going to take a quick break. When I come back, talking about this year's all defensive teams. If you're a fan of defense, don't go anywhere.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back, guys, to my final segment of the day. Like I said before the break, I want to discuss the All-NBA, all-defensive teams this year, for this year. The NBA awards were voted on this past week, July 21st through the 28th. So it's been done for a couple of days now. The final votes are officially in. There's no changing your mind. What they voted is what we're going to see. It's official. I gave you guys my first, second, and third team all NBA teams. I gave you guys my all rookie teams. The only thing left for me to give you guys is my all NBA defensive teams. I thought, why not end the show with it this week? So that's what I want to do. And defense, as far as defense goes, it's definitely the part of the NBA that goes unnoticed. As far as in today's game, in today's NBA, it's definitely the part of the game that goes unnoticed, that goes, it's not something we always talk about is defense, okay? It's super easy for us to name some of the league's top scorers and, some of the best offensive players in the league, but it's not as easy to list off some of the best defensive players in this league. So, how many of the great defensive players can you guys name? So, like I said, it's something I am bad of this myself. We really love and glorify the offensive side of the floor because it's fun. It's more interesting. It's fun to watch a guy score. It's more fun to watch a guy dunk and hit a deep three than it is a guy to strip the ball or lock a guy down defensively. It's more fun on the offensive side. So I know why we glorify the game, but we should not forget and undervalue the other side of the basketball, which is defense. And I want to bring up a very recent point. You may think the game is going away from it. Like I said, it's something we don't value in the game today. But Toronto's championship run last year, defense was just as big a part of their run as their offense was. They were well equipped on the defensive side. That was the biggest reason they beat Milwaukee and Giannis. They locked him down defensively. It wasn't just their offense, their firepower that blew them off of the court. It was their defense that locked down Giannis. So defense, it was something that was a huge part in Toronto's championship run last year. They had multiple great defensive players that were good on both sides of the ball. They have Ibaka, Kyle Lowry, Siakam, Van Fleet. They had Kawhi, Marcus Gasol. So multiple guys that could play on the both sides of the floor that take off defense as seriously as they take offense, if not more seriously. So yeah. It shouldn't be undervalued. It was super important to Toronto's run. So that's my spiel on defense and how it shouldn't be undervalued in today's NBA. Now let's get to my teams. Let's go ahead and start with my all-defensive first team. My first guard, since he plays point guard, he doesn't look like a guard. But my first guard is Ben Simmons. He's in the top 3 for voting for Defensive Player of the Year this year. He's leading the league in steals this year at over 2 per game. He can guard literally 1 through 5. He's a big part in the reason the 76ers are 6th overall in defensive rating. He and Joel Embiid, but mainly he is the biggest part of them being, that good on the defensive side, that side of the basketball. Like I said, number 1 in steals per game with over 2. So Ben Simmons is my first guard and my first team. The other guard, I gotta go with Marcus Smart, the proven veteran, the guy, a little bit undervalued now, but he goes out and he does it every single night. Over 1.5 steals per game. He's the biggest part. He's the anchor of that Celtic defense. And the Celtics defense is ranked 4th in defensive rating in the entire league. I have 30 teams, they're 4th. So he's the anchor. He shouldn't go unnoticed, undervalued. He does it every night, despite him being on first team all defense years prior. He needs to continue that effort. He does it every night. The biggest, he guards the best guard, the opposing guard, which we know how tough that is in today's NBA. Marcus Smart is my other guard on my first first team all defense. My first forward, I got to go with Giannis Antetokounmpo, arguably, one of the front runners, one or two for Defensive Player of the Year, as well as the MVP award. This year, he's first in defensive rating. He's first in defensive win shares, and the Milwaukee Bucks are first in defensive rating. He is averaging over a steal and over a block per game. He can literally guard 1 through 5 just as good, if not better, than anybody else in the league. When he guards a person, they are shooting under 40% from the floor, the best in the entire league. He, no doubt, is on my first team all defense, Giannis Antetokounmpo. Next, I got to go. My other forward has got to be Anthony Davis. He is averaging 2.5 blocks per game, leading the league in blocks. 1.5 steals per game. He's fourth in defensive rating, second in defensive win shares, and he is the anchor on the Lakers defense. He's the biggest part of the Lakers being third in defense this year after being one of the worst ranked defensive teams last year. So the biggest change is Anthony Davis, and obviously they've added other pieces like Danny Green, Avery Bradley, yes. But Anthony Davis is the anchor of that defense. He obviously second in win shares and fourth in defensive rating. He's the reason the Lakers are so high in rating. He is my Defensive Player of the Year. He is my first team forward on defense. Rudy Gobert is going to be my center, the Stifle Tower. We call him 2 blocks per game. He's third in defensive win shares. He's been the winner of this award years in a row, consecutive years. So we know what Rudy Gobert is. He is the best center as far as defense in the entire league. Let's real quickly go ahead and wrap today's show up with my second team all defense. My first guard, surprisingly, Chris Dunn. Looking at all the numbers and the stats, he is second in the league in steals per game, fourth in deflections on defense per game. Let's see, his steal percentage is 3.8%, so he steals 3.8% of the possessions he steals the ball, which is the best percentage since Tony Allen. You know Tony Allen on defense? Yeah, since Tony Allen back in 2014. He has the best steal percentage since him, so he is well deserving despite his team's terrible record. He is deserving of the second team all defense. The other guard, I gotta go with Jimmy Butler. 1.7, almost 2 steals per game. He's the leader of the defense, him and Bam Adebayo, on that Miami Heat grit and grind effort. They're one of the best defenses in the league today. He is one of the biggest parts to it. Jimmy Butler is my other guard. My first forward has got to be Kawhi Leonard. He's one of the best two-way players in the league today. When you're talking about defensive teams, you got to put Kawhi Leonard on one of them, okay? He's been the winner of Defensive Player of the Year. He's always on the defensive teams, it seems like. Always deserving to be on this list. He has to be on this list. Kawhi is my first forward. My other forward, Bam Adebayo, I was just talking about. He's the other half of Jimmy Butler on that Miami defense, as well as on the offense. 1.5 steals per game and 1.5 blocks per game. So he's doing it on offense and defense. But again, he's one of the anchors on this Miami defense, as well as Jimmy Butler. No other notable defenders on the Miami roster besides those two guys. So he, of course, makes my second team. My last center, I went ahead with Brook Lopez. I don't know if he's first or he's second. Yeah, second to Anthony Davis in blocks per game. He's fourth in defensive win shares, and he's the other. One of the other post presence, I should say, in Milwaukee, and they're obviously, like I said, the first number 1 rated defense in the league today. So he's the other part of that. He deserves to be on. He deserves recognition on the other end of the floor. He's hitting 3-pointers. He's also blocking shots. He is on my second team for the center position. So yes, defense, definitely not a thing that should go undervalued. Guys like Paul George and Klay Thompson are two other guys, if healthy, that always deserve to be on the all-defensive team. But again, those guys being banged up all year couldn't put them on the list. Clay didn't even play all year. But defense definitely is something underrated in today's game. Still something that's super important, if not more important than ever, with, some of the best offensive gameplay that we have ever seen, arguably, in the league. Some people say it's easier than ever to score. So that's making defense more important than ever in the NBA. Not something you guys should forget, not something that should be undervalued as well. But either way, we have the return of the NBA tonight. Hopefully, I know you guys are looking forward to it as much as I am, so hopefully the games go as planned. We got Zion and the Jazz up first, up front. Then later on in the night, we got the Battle of LA, the Clippers against the Lakers. So looking forward to that matchup. Looking forward to have basketball back. Let me know what you guys think. That's it for today's GSMC basketball podcast. If you enjoyed today's show, go check us out on social media, Facebook, Twitter. Go leave us a comment on whatever podcast platform you're listening on. As for me, thank you guys all for the continued support of us here at the GSMC Basketball Podcast. This is my last podcast for the week. I'm looking forward to hanging out this weekend, watching the official return of basketball. I'm going to be right back here on Monday for you guys, breaking down the official return, what we saw in the beginning of the 8 seeding game. So I'm looking forward to that. I'll see you guys right back here on Monday.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.